Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into something absolutely fundamental, language.
Right.
You sent us some really interesting source material, specifically an article about a new theory, the Odam Tili theory by Mahmudjon Kuchkarov.
Odam Tili, it means human language. And that title, well, it tells you a lot about the ambition here.
Right. So our goal in this deep dive is to really unpack it, understand the main arguments, and, see how it challenges some really big, long-held ideas about where language actually comes from.
And it does this by looking at some connections that, frankly, seem quite surprising at first glance.
Yeah, we're talking potential links between languages that are incredibly distant, historically, geographically, Sumerian, Etruscan, Turkic languages, even Native American languages like Sioux, Cherokee, Navajo, Hopi.
It's a huge scope, a really global comparison across vast stretches of time.
And the main idea, the thing that really grabbed me from the sources, is this. What if the sounds we make, the words, the meanings, what if they aren't just random? What if they're in some way naturally coded, based on things we all share as humans, our bodies, our minds, the world around us?
It's a move away from thinking of language as just convention or just some kind of innate brain structure. It suggests something more grounded in, universal human reality.
Okay, let's dig into this. Maybe we should start by setting the stage a bit.
Yeah.
Why is the origin of language such a huge puzzle anyway? Such a debated topic?
Well, it's arguably one of the biggest mysteries, scientifically, historically. Language is so fundamental to, everything, human consciousness, culture, working together.
Right.
But tracing its absolute beginnings, it's incredibly tough. Unlike bones, language doesn't leave physical fossils.
Yeah, you can't exactly dig up the first conversation. And for a long time, there have been these two sort of dominant ways of thinking about it.
Exactly. The first one, really influential, is Ferdinand de Saussure's idea about the arbitrariness of the sign. This is a cornerstone of modern linguistics. The idea that the connection between a word's sound like the noise tree and the actual thing, the concept of a tree, is basically just conventional, agreed upon.
So there's no natural reason tree sounds like tree. It could have been flumph or zig.
Pretty much, yeah. The link is purely based on social agreement within a language group, not inherent.
Okay, so that's one major pillar. What's the other?
The other big one is Noam Chomsky's concept of universal grammar.
Right, the idea that we're kind of born with a language blueprint, like a basic structure hardwired in our brains that lets us pick up any human language.
That's the essence of it. Chomsky's work focuses a lot on these underlying abstract grammatical patterns, suggesting we have this biological predisposition for language. It's universal to our species.
So we have Saussure saying the meaning part is arbitrary convention. And Chomsky saying the structural part, the grammar, is innate.
And then Odam Tili comes along, based on Kuchkarov's work, and says, hang on a second. What if it's not just arbitrary convention, and what if the universality isn't only about abstract, innate structures?
Okay, so this is where the alternative comes in. It argues language is what? An adaptive system? Empirically grounded, shaped by these natural coding mechanisms. What does natural coding actually mean here?
It means language isn't just floating free, it's rooted in things that are universal to all humans, everywhere. Wow. Things like our shared physiology, the way our vocal cords work, the sounds we can easily make.
Okay, our bodies.
Right. Then our shared cognitive abilities, how we all tend to perceive things, categorize the world, think about numbers, space.
Our minds.
Exactly. And finally, our shared environment, the basic stuff around us, earth, water, sky, that all humans interact with.
So the idea is that these universals, body, mind, environment, somehow get baked into the actual sounds and structures of language.
That's the core claim, yes. And this is where the evidence comes in. The comparative stuff across those languages you mentioned, Sumerian, Turkic, Native American, and so on. The theory uses patterns found there as proof of this natural coding.
All right, let's get into those examples from the source material. It starts with family terms, right? Words like father and mother, often seen as some of the oldest words.
Exactly. And the source highlights some striking phonetic similarities. Look at Turkic languages. Yeah. You've got Ada for father, Ana for mother.
Ada, Ana.
Then look at ancient Sumerian. Abba for father, Ama for mother.
Abba, Ama. Very similar A sounds again.
And then remarkably jump across the globe to Native American languages like Sioux and Cherokee. Ada for father, Ani for mother.
Whoa. Ada, Abba, Ada for father, Ana, Ama, Ani for mother. That A vowel is really consistent, often with simple consonants like T, B, meaned. How does Odam Tili explain this? across languages that are supposedly totally unrelated.
Well, this is where the physiological constraints idea really clicks in. The theory argues this isn't just coincidence. It suggests a universal coding tied to how babies vocalize. Think about the first sounds infants make, often simple vowels like A, combined with consonants that are easy to produce like M, P, B, T, D, N, labial sounds, dental sounds.
Sounds made at the front of the mouth.
Right. And these basic, easily produced sounds get associated with the most important people in their early lives. The caregivers, mother, father.
So the sounds themselves are linked to the physical act of learning to speak and the absolute core human experience of family.
That goes right against the idea that mother or father are just arbitrary labels.
It does. The theory presents this as strong empirical evidence against pure arbitrariness, at least for these really fundamental words.
Okay, interesting. What about words for things in the natural world? Does the theory find similar patterns there?
It claims to, yes.
Right.
The source looks at basic environmental terms. For earth, for instance, it points to Sumerian ki, Turkic yer, and Navajo ya.
Kinkeyer, yeah. Maybe a bit less obviously similar phonetically than the family words. Or am I missing something? Well, maybe. Phonetic shifts over millennia can be complex, but consider water. Sumerian uses A.
Just A. Like the vowel in the parent words.
Exactly, that fundamental vowel again. And then Turkic has Su, and Hopi, another Native American language, has Su.
Ah, okay. Su and Su, that's very close. And the Sumerian A ties back to that idea of basic, physiologically easy sounds.
Precisely. The theory argues these kinds of recurrences, especially the Su-Su link and the fundamental A for water, show how interacting with the environment shapes early language. You need words for essential things like earth and water.
And the sounds used might not be random, but somehow influenced by that shared reality.
That's the perspective, yes. Yeah. That the coding reflects our interaction with these essential elements.
Okay, so we've seen potential links via physiology and early social stuff like family, and via the shared environment, like earth and water. What about concepts that seem a bit more abstract, like numbers?
Numbers are fascinating too, according to the theory. Look at one. The source points to Turkic bear, Cherokee berry, and Sumerian dish.
Beer? Beery? There's a B sound again, and the E vowel. Dish.
And then for 10, you have Turkic on, Cherokee ona, and Sumerian U.
On, ona, U. A shared O kind of sound there. The force does note Sumerian used a base 60 system, which is obviously different from our base 10.
Right. The system is different, but the theory is looking at the claimed roots of the words for basic quantities like 1 and 10. It's suggesting these consistencies hint at shared cognitive processes.
Cognitive processes? Like what?
Well, think about early counting. What's the most universal, readily available counting tool that pretty much all humans have?
Fingers.
Exactly. The theory suggests that the very act of using fingers for counting, a universal human behavior, could have influenced the sounds that became number words. That shared O in on and ona for 10, for example. Maybe it's not just chance when you think about holding up 10 fingers, maybe forming a circle or O shape with hands. It's speculative, but connects cognition to sound.
Linking the physical act of counting on fingers to the sounds for numbers. Interesting. So these examples seem to circle back to the 3 core principles of natural coding that the Odam Tili theory talks about.
Yes, let's synthesize those. First, you have physiological constraints. Our vocal anatomy, how we learn to speak, makes certain sounds like a-u-u and simple consonant-vowel pairs easier or more fundamental.
Like in the family terms.
Exactly. The theory says these sounds show up in foundational words across languages because they're influenced by the physical machinery of speech, not just arbitrary choice.
The sounds easiest for us to make become the first building blocks. Makes sense.
Then second, cognitive universals. Because we share basic ways of thinking how we perceive quantity, space, relationships, this leads to similar ways of encoding these concepts in language.
Like the number examples, possibly tied to the universal concept of counting on fingers.
Right. How we universally think about something influences the sounds or structures we use for it.
Okay. And the third one?
Environmental interaction. Our shared need to talk about the physical world we all inhabit, earth, water, animals, plants, influences our vocabulary and maybe even the sounds associated with those things.
The earth and water examples fit here?
Correct. The constant interaction with these fundamental elements gets encoded into language.
So, putting it all together, how does this Odam Tili theory really square up against those big traditional ideas from Saussure and Chomsky?
Well, it's a direct challenge to Saussure's arbitrariness principle, fundamentally.
How so?
If you can show these consistent phonetic and semantic links, similar sounds for similar core meanings across languages that are supposed to be totally unrelated, if mother words consistently use sounds linked to baby vocalizations, if water words show parallels, if 10 has echoes of finger counting, well, that suggests the link between sound and meaning isn't purely arbitrary or conventional.
It suggests there might be a natural, universal reason why certain sounds got attached to certain meanings, at least for core concepts.
Exactly. It implies the choices weren't random, but were guided or predisposed by these universal human factors.
And what about Chomsky's universal grammar? How does Odam Tili interact with that?
It kind of reframes the whole idea of universality. Chomsky emphasizes an innate, abstract biological structure for grammar. Odam Tili doesn't necessarily deny innate capacities, but it suggests that the universality we see in language might stem more from the shared experiences, our bodies, our minds, our environment, and the natural coding that results from them.
So the universality comes less from a purely abstract brain module and more from the concrete shared reality of being human.
That's a good way to put it. It's a universality grounded in our physical existence and interaction with the world, not just abstract rules.
It feels like it's trying to sort of bring linguistics down to earth a bit, connect it more directly with anthropology, cognitive science, maybe even biology.
Absolutely. The source material stresses that. It's pushing for a more holistic, interdisciplinary view. Language isn't just this isolated thing happening in the brain or through social agreement. It's deeply interwoven with our entire human experience.
What strikes me is that this isn't just a minor adjustment. Suggesting language is naturally coded this way. It feels like a potential paradigm shift.
It really does.
Moving away from models that are either purely abstract or purely conventional towards something rooted in, us, our physical reality, our shared experiences on this planet.
It's a powerful idea. Language, maybe our most defining feature, is shaped by the common ground of simply being human.
Okay, so let's recap this deep dive. We looked at the Odam Tili theory, drawing from the sources you provided. It uses these striking parallels in languages like Sumerian, Turkic, Etruscan, Native American to argue that language might be much less arbitrary than we thought.
Right. It suggests these similarities in basic words for family, nature, numbers could point towards language being naturally coded.
Meaning it's not just randomly made up or solely pre-programmed in our brains in an abstract way.
Exactly. But deeply rooted in the universal human condition. Having a body that makes certain sounds easily, a mind that thinks in common ways about core concepts, and living together in a shared environment.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it, if language is naturally coded by these shared human factors, what other deep connections might be hiding across all languages, connections we haven't even noticed yet, linking us all? How does thinking about this maybe change how you view your own language? The words you use every single day, perhaps echoing something incredibly ancient and universal.
Definitely gives you a lot to think about. A fascinating perspective on what makes us human.